Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Janine here today, and I thought we'd go through, I'm finally posting the January 2022 Simon Says Stamp card kit. Finally posting the video I made ages ago about this. And I thought I'd walk you through this. I'm going to do use the same stencil that comes in the stamp set, in the card kit. And I'm going to do 3 different things. So the first thing is, the most obvious thing, is to use some ink. So I'm using some Stampin' Up! Ink here, and I've tried to sort of coordinate and get the colours to look kind of similar. So we're using similar sort of colours. And this is a really pretty snowflake stencil. Yes, I realise it's we're not in January anymore, but it's still wintry. So and I'm late with it, so there we go. So got some ink on there, and then I'm going to spritz a little bit. I believe the cardstock that I used was just a white textured cardstock. All 3 of these are textured cardstock. I think they are the Dovecraft Premium Paper Mania textured premium paper. So it's a thinner cardstock, so you can't add too much moisture without it becoming a bit too, like it might sort of start to pill up. Is that what it's called? And so I used some just copy paper underneath just to help absorb some of the extra moisture, just made it clean up a little easier as well. So I'm sticking the next piece, which is this bright pink. This one was a bit weird. I really wasn't sure if I liked this or not. In the end, I'm quite happy with it, but I thought the contrast was going to be a bit better than it was. But you'll see here in a second, I'm going to use some distress paint. And again, in a similar sort of colour to the ink. I think it was Coastal Cabana ink that I used from Stampin' Up. And then this is the Selvage Patina distress paint that I'm just taking a sponge with and dabbing over the top. So I know I've got pink cardstock underneath, but if you wanted to use white cardstock or a more neutral cardstock to use the same technique over, it's quite a fun thing to do. It's obviously, you're going to get a bit messy with these techniques, but it's just a bit of fun. And also I found that the blue from the paint and the pink underneath, the undertone from the pink paper or cardstock, actually created almost like a purpley colour. So this one in the end was quite cool, but you'll see it looks a bit mad when I take this off. And again, I spritzed it and then just grabbed some paper towel to lift some of that ink up that's underneath. And being distressed, it will pick up that and react like it so beautifully does on everything. And again, just taking off. Can you see it's a bit psychedelic? And I really wasn't sure because it really didn't quite have the impact, and maybe I didn't have enough paint, I'm not sure, but it didn't quite turn out how I was expecting it to. So I will go back in a bit and add to it just to try and add some extra depth, or not so much depth, but sort of just add to the layering effect on these little backgrounds. And that's kind of how we're rolling today. We've got the stencils to start with that we're playing with, and then you'll see I'll add some other things in as well. So this is kind of like I want to say a royal blue rather than a navy blue kind of cardstock. And again, I've got the stencil just temporarily taped to the back of it, or to the front of it, I should say. And this time I'm going to take the Glitz Glitter Gel, which comes in the January 22 card kit. Oh my word, the stuff is mad. It's like you want it to sparkle, like sparkly, but it doesn't really do that. But it's just got this beautiful texture and color and shimmeriness, and it's just cool. I don't know how else to describe this stuff until you've got it. It was not what I expected when I opened it. I thought it was going to be kind of like a glitter paste, like I've sort of known and had before. It's not. It's very different, and the texture is very different as well. So it was very unusual, but very cool, and I love it. So I got that on to with the spatula. You can use the spatula to apply it the whole thing, but I also used it's actually I think a dough cutter for like baking and stuff, and I got that off Amazon for like £2 or something, and I used that to sort of scrape it across. It gets a more even, you get a more even like coating of the texture paste. So clean up, which is what I went and did, and I also had left them to dry, and I'm now going back with the same ink for the first panel, and I'm going to add ink over the top of what we've already inked. This way the white snowflakes, although they look very nice, it just tones them down a bit, and it gives another layer to the card. Bearing in mind this is also just white textured card, or was white textured card, so it's already got some texture in the background. It's yeah, it's going to be a different sort of thing from all the normal watercolor papers and other types of papers that I normally use. So got some extra paper, and my cat is scratching at the door. And then what I'm going to do is take the pink panel, so the second one, which is the one that had the distress paint on, and I'm going to grab the paint again, and I'm going to drag something else that I haven't actually used yet, is my little mini brayer. This is a Tim Holtz brayer, and I'm just rolling the brayer through the paint, and then I'm going to just sort of swipe it or sweep it over the top of the page, of the piece of paper, cardstock. And it just adds a bit more interest because it creates these extra lines and things. And like I say, because the cardstock is already textured, it then highlights that texture as well. So you've got these sort of psychedelic, although not so psychedelic now, snowflakes in the background with this sort of almost like a linen effect that seems to of the paper that comes out, and I liked that much better. It was a much better result than what I'd had before, where it looked like, super psychedelic. Woo! So I also spritzed the paint that was left over and just decided to play and dab it into it for a bit of extra, again another layer, bit of extra texture. Bear in mind this is very thin cardstock. This is not your normal sort of cardstock that you would use for watercolor or playing these sort of techniques like you would with mixed media papers and things like that. So you can't keep adding moisture to it because eventually it will fall apart. But I played until I was happy, and I also played until I knew I couldn't do anymore, and then I did stop. So but it's nice. It just adds another bit of like speckling to the paper. So again, another layer. So as long as each layer in between is dry, as you add the next one on, it just keeps building those layers and that interest in the background. Also, this little brayer it's very easy to unhook, as you saw there, and then just clean off. So I'm just using a baby wipe to clean that up really, really easily. And then that's it. That's clean up for distress paint. Very easy. If you do it straight away, it's really easy. And also that little mat is what normally came with the glass media mat. So the next thing I did was I took the snowflake folder that comes in the January kit, and I actually embossed all three of these. It's there. I'm showing the back of it, and even on this very textured glitter gel one, it did actually emboss that. I was very impressed. So for all of these, because I want that texture from the embossing folder to actually come through, I'm now dragging ink pads over the top. So I used Bermuda Bay Stampin' Up because I was on a Stampin' Up thing with this panel, and you just lightly drag. This is an old technique from years and years ago, but you just drag it over the top and it just highlights all the top edges. You're basically catching the top of the raised embossed parts of the image, or the the embossing folder, what's been embossed. So I did the same and used selvage patina again in just the distress ink as opposed to the oxide on the second panel, the pink one. And again, it's very wet because it's distress ink, but it just highlights those edges of the raised bits of the embossed areas. Now this one was a little trickier. I was a little unsure what I was going to use and whether anything was actually going to show up. It does a little bit. It's not as effective because you've got lots of chunkiness with the glitter paste. But I used prized ribbon, which I thought was a sort of hopefully a dark enough colour that I could get some effect going on, and it does actually pick it up. So I was really impressed because I just thought at this point I'm just playing. I didn't even know if I was going to make these into cards, or although that was the original idea, but it does actually pick them up and it does give some extra interest in the background, and they almost look like they're behind the stenciled snowflakes. It's kind of weird. It does play a trick on the eye, but I love it. So I also decided to just, I don't know what I was thinking here. I used some alcohol, just isopropyl, because I didn't want too much extra moisture, but the alcohol would evaporate pretty quickly, and just spritzed it so we could get maybe a little bit more of a spritz like I would do with, or an effect, a reaction like I would with water on background papers. Didn't work the same way, so it was just, but if you don't try, you don't know. So it didn't, it happens. So I'm just making sure these are now dry, just with a paper towel, just to really sort of make sure that I've got as much moisture off all of them as I can. And at the end, you'll see the completed cards, and you'll be able to see these a bit better anyway. So, but even on that glitz like gel one, it still worked really nicely. So for the images that I'm going to put onto the cards, which I decided to make, I'm using an Alterations Bigs die called from Tim Holtz, which is the tiny tags and tabs. I never get that right. And I'm using a few of the snowmen from the Warmest Wishes stamp set that comes in the January card kit. So I've cut the tags out, the biggest tag that's on that Bigs die, and 3, you'll see at the top there, 3 of the tiny tags for the sentiments. I thought this would be kind of cool to make almost like a tag type thing, topper, whatever you call it now, for the front of the card. So I was kind of winging it at this point because the backgrounds were the experiment for me. And I decided I actually wanted to do something with them. So I'm stamping with some ink on 3 blackout ink. And this is like it is a hybrid ink, so it means you can use your alcohol markers with it. I'm also then stamping the images onto some post-it note. And I'm going to cut just the bottom edge of the snow people, because I don't need the rest of it. I need the bottom edge masked off, I can't say the word, so that I can create like a little bit of ground for them to be sat on, a bit like they're sitting in the snow. So that also comes in this stamp set, which you'll see in a second. So I'm just cutting around them very randomly. I'm not worried about, say, the like, what would you call those fringy bits on like the scarf on the middle one. I'm just, or the one on the left, I'm just getting them cut around the main part of them, so I can get this snowy hill area, whatever we're calling it, on there, and just stamping over the top. So once we take once we've done that and then take the masks off, you'll see they look like they're just sitting on top of this little bit of snow. And then you've created almost like a mini scene sort of thing. So the next thing I wanted to do was get the sentiments ready. So I'd already sized which tabs or tags I was going to use and which sentiments. I had a rough idea, and then I was like, right, these are the ones I'm going to use because they were the ones that fit. So that's kind of how I decided which ones were going where, because they're the ones that fit in their space. So, and these aren't Christmassy. They're not even wintry. They're just, other than the images and that, they're more like, thinking of you, ready for a hug, which I know my mum is very much so. It's been a long time. So I thought they were nice, thinking of you kind of cards rather than, even though they're winter themed, rather than Christmas themed, if that makes sense. So then I used the salvaged patina again because I thought it was a lovely colour for the snowflakes, and I just used one of the smaller snowflakes in the stamp set as well, and just stamped them randomly all over the background. And that's as techie as the background's going to get. Very easy to create this. Now I'm doing these on like a smallish kind of tag, but you could do this on a larger scale as well, so don't forget that, and actually have them as tags for presents and all that sort of fun stuff. I also used one of the larger ones on the center of all the sentiments, just again to tie it all in together. So what I would do, and I did do this off camera, is I will colour these in, and I've also cut out using the outside in scalloped rectangles from Lawn Fawn. I think it's the smallest one. That was like the perfect size for the little tags. And what I did was I cut each of those out in the same colour as the back panel, so the blue, the white, the pink. And then what I'm doing is I'm just cutting these down so that they will fit with a little border around them. So I think they're about 4 by 5 1/4. So they'll have a nice little border around on the front of the card. And we're just going to have white card bases. I thought that made sense for what we're doing. There's also a lot of white on the, on the tags themselves. So the card bases measure 11 by 4 1/4. Scored at 5.5, and that's a standard American A2 size card. I love this size card. You guys know that. I use it all the time. I never use an A6. I think that's what it's called here. I'm very rare. I just prefer the sizing, and also I use Imperial all the time. It's just easy math for me. So when I came to sticking on the backgrounds onto the card bases, which is what I'm doing here, I decided to go with some tape as opposed to a tape runner, because we've got a lot of, and some of these were still a little bit damp. They weren't super dry yet. So I decided that using a tape as opposed to a tape runner had less chance of it sort of almost like the tape. If the tape's really strong, it'll almost like peel your paper back with you while you're trying to put the tape on. So I used a tape as opposed to a tape runner, and I put it all the way around the edge and in the middle, because there's a lot that's gone on to these pieces of cardstock. So although it's thinner cardstock, it is a little bit warped. It's had embossing, some of it's had paste on it, it's had moisture, paint, ink, all sorts of stuff. So I always like to err on side of caution, and I add lots of adhesive anyway, but especially if you've embossed a piece of cardstock, even if you've not done all this to it, I would make sure you've got adhesive all the way around it and in the middle, to make sure it doesn't sort of pop up. So once I've got all 3 of these, and I'm nearly there, get all 3 of these onto the card bases, I'll then work on the main little images that are going to go, we'll put our main pieces together to go on the fronts. And this is actually a really simple design, I guess, of a card front. It's not as busy, I guess, or as detailed as what I would normally do. I love the scene cards because it's almost like a little storybook, whereas these are more, I don't know how you describe it, but they're not as detailed as I normally would and normally like doing. But I really wanted to get some nice little cards out. These are just, like I say, thinking of you cards for any occasion really, but especially around winter and the holidays, it's hard for some people. So I decided to drag out a little sponge dauber thing. I never know, I just go with it. These little finger daubers, I think that's what they're called. And on each of the like coordinating pieces, I decided to ink the edges, because the white tag on the white like scalloped rectangle, it just kind of blended in too much. So I decided that actually, I think I was having a chat there with someone. Just highlighting and inking the edges of that in the colour that I've used for that main panel that we started off with, it just highlights it and just gives it a bit of depth. So all three pieces got a bit inked around the edges. And then for the sort of navy, that's not navy, more like a royal blue kind of colour, I used the prize ribbon because it's just such a beautiful ink. And I can't wait to get the latest colour. I'm just like, oh, he keeps bringing more colours. I gotta have them. I can't help it. I'm going to run out of space at one point. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So prize ribbon all around the edge. And I know it's very difficult to see because it's blue on blue, but you can actually see a little bit of it. So it does make a difference, believe it or not. So I then used the selvage patina as well on the edges of the, on the edges of the, what I'm calling the pink card. The white one I used the Coastal Cabana. If you can hear squeaking in the background, it's my husband's chair. Just, I don't know, it's going to pick up the sound of that. So selvage patina around the edge there. And again, it gave it this more purpley sort of hue to it. But again, it does something. When you ink the edge of something, if you need it to sort of stand out a little bit, it works. And it just helps to draw your eye in, but it also helps to almost like, so it's not so flat, is what I'm trying to say, in the worst way. Now, I have a funny story to tell you. Right, this twine I've had it for years. I do not have it anymore, but I have had it for years, and it's a Stampin' Up! Twine from forever ago, right? So I think it was called linen thread or something, and it came on like a cardboard thing, and it was just wrapped around. So I made these cards, and I tied all these little bows on them, and just a little bit of something on the tags, and also got my sentiment tag on there, so that was cute. And then I will add it with some foam adhesive dots. I will actually sort of add that on there. So while I'm doing that, I came in the next day, I'd done the cards, I'd left everything on the desk, and I thought, well, I'll make note, and I'm doing this a little bit differently now with the supplies and stuff, but at the time I was like, right, I need to make note of everything, and left all of it there, the cards, all the all the supplies I'd used on it, including this thread. And the next thing, I wake up the middle of the night, one of my cats was being sick and coughing, and I got up to sort her out, and I look in my art room, and I'm like, okay, there's this random thing, like it's half, I'm half asleep, and it's in the dark, and I'm going, okay, I can't really work out what that is. So I put the light on, and I go, oh, it's the twine packaging, like the piece of cardboard that the twine's wrapped around, or this linen thread is wrapped around. So okay, fine. And I look at it and I pick it up because, again, half asleep. And I'm like, okay, there's no thread on it. Where's the thread? Anyway, long story short, my other cat, my little boy, had decided to eat it. All of it. So, granted, it wasn't a new pack. It wasn't a full pack. But he'd eaten. There was enough on it for me to use for a good few projects. And he'd eaten all of it. So, first of all, I kind of laughed because I thought, well, this is typical of my cat. And then I slightly panicked because I thought, I don't know what that does to cats on the inside. Anyway, so I did some research. And they basically said, you've got to be very careful, because if If it starts to come out, don't touch it. Just let it come out naturally. Let's just leave it at that. And it can damage their internal organs if you quote unquote help them get rid of it. Anyway, so I left it, and it eventually came out, but it was hysterical how it came out. But anyway, we'll leave it there. So I popped all of these up with some foam tape, all 3 layers, and this is the final 3 cards, with some fun textured backgrounds. We've stenciled, we've embossed, we've inked, we've stamped, we've coloured. So it's a whole, and gelled, glitter gel, no, what's it called? Yeah, stenciled with some gel. But I really like how these 3 turned out. I was really quite chuffed. It's very much, that's not English. It's totally not my normal, but I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. I hope you like the little story at the end there. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you guys give this a whirl. This kit is fantastic. I will more than likely be bringing you more ideas still in July with this kit. So I hope you enjoyed this, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye bye. That was a bit squeaky.